The following research project is a study conducted on the impact of dams on biodiversity in the southeast United States. This research has been conducted by Raul Galvan, Paul Mullinex, and Chloe Boissy. In order to understand the broader implications of this research project, we need to understand what habitat fragmentation is. Habitat fragmentation occurs when a natural ecosystem, such as a forest or a river, become divided by a man-made structure such as a road or a dam. These man-made structures prevent animals from getting from one side to the other, meaning that they may no longer have the food that they once had available to them or other resources. This causes the population to decrease, resulting in a loss of biodiversity. With this in mind, we wanted to study the impact of dams on lakes in Georgia. Part 2. Let's take a look at what our research methods were. To begin with, we selected 15 different lakes that were scattered throughout Georgia that had sufficient data points for the 3 orders of fish we had chosen to research. We chose to study 3 different orders of fish: Cypriniformes, a ray-finned fish; Perciformes, another type of ray-finned fish; and Siluriformes. These are catfish. We chose to study these different orders because they are abundant in population size and they're recognizable among the public, meaning that there would be plenty of data on these 3 orders. In order to collect the data for our project, we used GBIF, an open source database that has data from academic institutions as well as reportings from individuals who report sightings of specific species. In order to find the data we wanted, we looked through the occurrence of each species that was accounted for in GBIF. We did this by searching for the order we wanted, which in this example is Siluriformes, and then filtering out the decade that we were looking for under the time tab. Here you can see that we're filtering for the decade of 1990 through 2000. Once this result has come up, we look for the results on a global map, and each point appears as an orange dot. But because the global map is too broad, we zoomed in on each lake we were looking for. In this example, you can see us zooming into Lake Seminole in Georgia. Is it Seminole? Seminole? Anyways, we then use a mapping tool to select the lake, and then the database will produce a rendition of the map, and then GBIF generates the data that you need after using these filters. And in this example, you can see that there have been 314 Siluriformes spotted in Lake Seminole from 1990 through 2000. We used Google Sheets to organize the data we collected. We created tables and separated each lake, then tracked the amount of each species that had been sighted during each decade from 1980 through 2010. We also included the amount of years since each lake had been dammed. Feel free to pause the video to take a closer look at the data we collected and how we organized it. Results. The goal of our project was to see if the population of the studied fish increased as the years since the construction of the dam increased. In order to visualize our data, we graphed the population of each fish species over the amount of years since the construction of the dam. We did this for each order of fish: Cypriniformes, Perciformes, and Siluriformes. We then plotted the data we had for each lake in a different color over each one of these graphs per respective order. Please note that this is just a diagram and not actual finding. In this graph, you can see the data we collected for Cypriniformes for the 15 lakes, graphed over the amount of years since the dam had been constructed for each lake. Data for Cypriniformes is scattered, and lakes don't follow any notable trends, meaning that we can't conclude anything significant for our data on Cypriniformes. In this graph, you can see the results we gathered for Perciformes on the 15 lakes we studied. We can see an overall positive trend, although there is a divot in the last decades showing a population decrease. However, it was not strong enough to impact the overall population increase trend line.
Perciformes were the order that had the most data, probably because of the abundance of species in this order. In this graph, you can see our results for Siluriformes, and here we see that Siluriformes had a big increase from the 80s through the 90s, after which trend lines got a bit different for each lake, and they vary, so we cannot conclude anything for the impact of dams on Perciformes either. It is important to consider the flaws in our research methods that may have resulted in skewed data. Because GBIF allows individuals to report species sightings, years with low populations of the species we were studying may have simply been because of a lack of reporting. In addition to this, although we hypothesize that species will adapt to new fragmented environments and then experience increase in population size, we cannot prove that theory with this research. After analyzing our graph data, we concluded that there were no significant population trends. Each lake had different population sizes for each order we researched per decade. Because of this, our data was inconclusive. In order to be able to prove our hypothesis that fish populations would increase in decades after dam construction, more studies would need to be conducted on specific lakes to be able to make firm conclusions with empirical evidence. Thank you for your time and attention.